Hi there. In this lecture we see Vladimir Zak against Rashid Nezhmetdinov in 1951 URS Championship. This is round 19. D4, knight f6 from Nezhmetdinov, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7. So a king's Indian defense. We have g3. It goes into a Benoni structure with this c5 move. d5, e6, bishop g2, e takes, c takes, d6. White castles, knight a6, bishop f4, knight c7. So d6 is a pretty sensitive backward pawn. It's not protected by any other pawns in this position, and black has to be careful. Quite often there are maneuvers like knight d2 to c4 to hit d6. We have now a4, and now actually this next move, to be pedantic, is in inaccuracy b6. It does weaken light squares. Rook e8, by contrast, if we look at this here, black could make use of knight h5, and in this position now this is better timing actually for b6. So say knight c4, bishop a6, and it's an even position. So the Benoni has to be played very accurately, otherwise there could be big trouble ahead. So b6 now slightly different because e4 is played. That's the big difference. Yeah, when we had played rook e8, we're preventing e4, and here white's maybe preparing both knight c4 and e4, but we get the bishop to kind of block the e-pawn. But now with e4, white has a more significant positional advantage. Knight h5, we have bishop g5, f6. The bishop can go to e3 now, not blocking out. That pawn's on e4 now. We have f5. Now this does mean that black has certain weaknesses in the position. Bishop g5, queen d7, e takes f5, queen takes f5, and now queen d2. Yeah, this opening is a little bit risky, the Benoni. If bishop e7, this does seem to actually take out that sensitive pawn, that d6 pawn. There is maybe a little bit of compensation, but maybe not enough. White can actually hold d5 quite comfortably and play knight c4 with advantage. So yes, bishop e7 does seem quite a testing move indeed, but queen d2 was played. Bishop b7, rook f to e1. Note that there is basically an arrow to the king. We should need to watch out for these arrows to the king, yeah, that Nezhmetdinov has. Even if some of them are total x-rays, bear them in mind, especially this guy. Just bear in mind this guy cutting across to the king. So in this position, after bishop b7, if bishop e7, this doesn't work here very well all of a sudden. Because rook f7, bishop takes d6. We have knight e8, and we'd get our pawn back. For example, bishop f4, we'd get our pawn back with interest. Black actually has a small edge here. So actually better than bishop e7 now is actually bishop h6. And this position, taking out the g7 bishop, white should have a small edge here overall. Okay, so anyway, rook f to e1, rook f7 is actually a further inaccuracy. Bishop f6 might actually be better. Rook a to d1, so white's got a tremendous position. Vladimir Zak, by the way, was a trainer of well-known players like Spassky and Korchnoi, so he's playing very principled manner. Look at all the pieces. They look like, you know, this is a very principled player indeed, positionally. So queen d7, what could possibly go wrong here? Bishop e3. Now knight f6 actually makes things worse for black. Rook e7, knight g5, This is tremendous for white, this position in any case. If black has to resort to bishop takes c3 to take out a4, white's got a huge position here overall. So anyway, knight f6 makes things even worse for black. Knight g5, rook e7, bishop h3. So it looks as though this is really an amazing position for white. What could possibly go wrong? So against Nezhmetdinov or Atal, they're both really good friends. What could possibly go wrong? It's to do with the arrows to the king here. Basically, it's these arrows which are dangerous, and this is really amazingly, vividly illustrated by this next move. So what should white do first before we even look at the next move? Bishop f4 is a move targeting d6. Just take time, this position, not letting black do any major tricks. Just keep it simple, then check here. And you can see that, king h8, this looks like diabolical, knight f7 check, then winning the queen. So this looks absolutely diabolical, this. That's a way of white playing it very safely. Just bishop f4. When you're winning, you can play more simply, generally speaking. And what else? Bishop c8, knight e6, bishop takes d6. This is also very unpleasant. Black can just lose the exchange for not too much. White has a clear advantage. But knight e6 was played. And all of a sudden, this arrow to the king gives black an amazing resource. It starts with, what would you play here and what would be the follow-up for 100 points? Yeah, we're going to play knight takes e6 here with a certain idea in mind. That we want to open up here for queen c6. So white tries bishop takes e6 check. So guess what we play here? Yeah, the exchange sacrifice, rook takes e6. We have not just the bishop without the counterpart, but lots of light square weaknesses all around white's king. So the arrows to the king are without also a key defender on the light squares. So undefended arrows to the white king, you could call them. We have now queen c6. King f1 is tried. What does the white want to do? Lose material? There's no point to play knight d5. So king f1. Queen g2 check. King e2. Queen f3 check. King f1. If king d3, queen f5 check. And this would be very problematic for white. If king e2, that's pretty clear that actually white gets mated. So if we look at this again, if king c4, queen takes e6 check, queen f5 check, knight e4 is super strong. It's very unpleasant here with that king on c4. If knight takes, queen e6 check is key. Queen takes e4 check. It's all running with checks, and it's, winning the queen is going to be winning. And after knight e4, if we examine queen c2, queen f7 check, knight f6, there's a lot of pressure on d5. This would be winning for black. So anyway, yeah. So the king actually went to f1. Guess what black plays now for 100 points? Maybe 100 too much in this case. Maybe 10 points. Black to play. What would you play? This is beautiful stuff. You're not going to get a player, around this era, apart from Mikhail Tal. They're beautiful tacticians, combinatory attacking players. Absolutely beautiful. Or Alekhine as well. Yeah, I love the dynamic players, but this is beautiful to be testing on the dynamic players, I have to say. Knight g4, it ends the game. Move 28 ends the game. We're threatening knight takes h2 to drag the king back to g1, for the checkmate. So if knight d5, if that's like one of the only moves, we can take on h2. And actually here, there's a beautiful move here again. Can you see what it is? And I will give you 50 points for this. This is not so trivial in my view, relatively speaking to everything I'm saying. This next move here in this position would be a crusher. Yeah, a beautiful disconnect. Bishop d4. To make sure this bishop is felt on the diagonal. Disconnecting the queen from d5. So yes, if bishop takes d5, connection established, queen g2, mate threat, etc. And if king takes h2, bishop takes d5. Again, it's pretty hopeless. b3, queen g2. White's going to get mated pretty shortly. King h3, queen h5, checkmate. White's pretty, much mated here. So yes, knight g4 ends the game. Not showing to the crowds, knight d5 as a resource, which, yeah, it's a resource here. But yeah, knight takes h2, king g1, bishop d4. And then, if knight f4, it does protect g2, but we've got, what have we got here for 5 points? Yeah, the bishop and queen are lovely on this diagonal. We've got queen h1, checkmate. Yeah, as you might be able to tell, I'm enthusiastic about this diagonal, these light square weaknesses, this absolute diagonal. This is magnificently clear example of underestimating an exchange sacrifice, because it's just asking for this. White was in such a dominating position. There's also a big lesson about when you have the advantage in chess, don't allow complexity in. Black has fundamentally, the backward pawn. So as mentioned, bishop f1, torture the backward pawn instead, welcome some simplification, take time, extinguish black resources, make sure that this bishop is not seeing the light of day. This arrow across the king, it's not seeing the light of day. This variation would have been very miserable by contrast. White's, installation strategy, gradual installation without any liberation of black's pieces, basically. This would have been the way to go. But this was a huge instructive mistake. So knight takes e6, rook takes e6. What a beauty. And the related diagonal issues and how they can be exploited. Beautiful stuff. I hope you enjoyed this as much as me. Okay. Thanks so much. All comments, questions, likes and subscribes, really appreciated. Thanks so much.